Right to be Read podcast, episode number 28. Interview with Cole Palmer from Patreon.
You are listening to the Right to be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Right to be Read podcast, the podcast that inspires and encourages writers. I'm your host, Ani Alexander, and today I'm talking to Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer is creator and user relations manager at Patreon. And what is Patreon? Well, I'm here to find out. Hello, Cole. I'm really happy to have you here. And how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to connect and tell all of your listeners a little bit about what we're doing here at Patreon and hopefully help them out.
Thanks a lot. So let's start from the basics. What is Patreon and what you're doing there?
Yeah, Patreon is ongoing crowdfunding for content creators and artists of all kinds. So a lot of people ask what is crowdfunding, and crowdfunding in the crowdfunding space, people are very familiar with Kickstarter. Kickstarter is where people rally together, raise money for one large project that they're doing. Patreon's similar to Kickstarter, except instead of one large project, it's ongoing small pledges for people who are making things continually. So whether that be online videos or blog posts or a podcast or webcomics, some people need a platform for something that they're creating that's more ongoing and recurring rather than one large project. So that's what Patreon is in a nutshell.
Okay, so we can say that it's basically, let's say, for those who know Kickstarter, it's a Kickstarter for creative people who are creating on regular basis.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say since our podcast is about writers and for writers, let's say I'm a writer, for example, and I found out your website and I don't know, I'm writing a book, let's say, or a series or whatever it is. What should be my next steps? What do I do?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to actually get onto Patreon and do a little bit of investigating and see who's actually on there. We have a lot of writers on our platform already, such as Nika Harper, Jen Frank. These people are all writing, and they're doing it in different ways. And you would know best what's the best way for you to release your content. Some people bundle up their writings to, let's say, one blog post, or some people do it per article that they write, and they write one article per month. There's others that say for every 2 short stories that I release, that's what I'm going to be collecting pledges for. So it's good to kind of get an idea of what the writers are currently doing and seeing which one best fits your model of content release. And then you can go from there in setting up your page and then finally launching it and going live.
Okay, you mentioned pledge. Pledge is what, like the amount of money you're getting from your fans, or what is it?
Yeah, so there's a few different types of methods in which a creator can accept pledges. And there's the monthly model, which is on a per month basis. And then there's also the per creation model. So you can either collect a pledge per month where a user says, I'm going to donate $1, $2, $5, $10 per month. Or there's also the model that says, every blog post or article that you release, I'm going to donate to you $5. And that's every time that you release some content. So there's 2 different options.
Okay, so and with the second option, it actually kind of encourages the creator to produce more of its content, most probably, right?
Yeah, it really depends on you individually. Patreon is very much centered around quality rather than quantity. With the traditional ad revenue model, what's really valued is the eyeballs. And that's not what we're trying to do here at Patreon. You're going to be in a relationship with some of your closest and most diehard fan base. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that you really want to take lightly. So instead of just pushing out content to create new posts to push more ads, that really doesn't work on Patreon. So I would say creating quality content is the more accurate term rather than creating more of it.
Okay, I see. And since you mentioned quality, is there any approval mechanism, or you take in anyone?
No, not at all. Patreon's for everybody. We have people from all over the world using Patreon, and there's no restrictions. Anybody can log in and make a Patreon page at any time.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter what kind of quality does his creations have. If he has fans,
it's kind of like a self justice system where these people are donating to you based upon the quality of your work that they've expected. And I think that entering into a type of covenant with your fans based upon the quality of work that you've put forth thus far, they're going to expect that quality of work, if not better, with the additional funding that you're receiving. And if that doesn't happen, it's quite possible that fan may not want to donate any longer because they're not receiving the value that they once received from the content.
Okay, so for the creators, it's more or less clear, what they are getting. What about when you're looking from the fans' perspective? When they donate that amount of money, whatever they decide to donate, what do they get for that?
Well, there's a couple different options. We have people. One of the main features on Patreon is the rewards section. Creators can offer up rewards in exchange for a monthly pledge or a per content pledge. And these rewards range from $1 to $50 to $100, whatever that may be. Or you can choose to just do a campaign with no rewards and then just accept pledges in exchange for the content that you're creating. So that's completely flexible and depends on the creator and how much bandwidth they have to do digital or some type of scalable reward system. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely not required. So it's all about setting that expectation with your fan base, and the video portion of your Patreon page helps with that, and make sure that you just have really clear messaging. But I would say, as far as expectations, that's all on the creator to set that with their fans, whether they're going to be receiving some type of rewards or they're just going to continue to receive the value that they get out of the content itself.
Okay, I see. And also, there are some people who create different things, like, they write books and also they have a blog, and parallel to that, they might also have some, let's say, podcast or an online course about something. How can they I don't know, is there a way to combine all those under one thing? Or, how do they approach this if they are having several different directions?
Yeah, that's a great point. If there's one creator on our page or on our service, Nika Harper. Her link is patreon.com/Nika Harper, and what she does is her tagline on her Patreon page is Nika Harper is creating words, stories, tales, and the unknown. And what she's collecting is $2 per story and videos. So she writes stories, but also releases videos as well. Mm-hmm. So she kind of outlined it for her patrons on every time she writes 2 stories and releases a video, that's going to be when she charges. In the future, we're going to make this a lot easier, because the other option right now is to have a separate Patreon page, and you can have as many Patreon pages as you want right now. But in the future, we're going to have a channels feature, which is going to have the ability for a creator to split their creations into categories. So let's say I'm Cole and I create blog posts and videos. Some people really like my blog posts but don't really want to support my videos. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to, under one umbrella of Cole the creator, be able to choose if you want to support my blog posts or just support my videos. That's something that we do have on the horizon. It's on our product roadmap, and we're going to get to that soon. But for now, the best way to do that is to either have separate Patreon pages or kind of loop them like Nika does. And it'll make a little more sense when your listeners actually visit the Patreon page of Nika, or to group them and combine them like she does.
I see. And how is the process? I mean, how do you deliver this content to the ones who pledge? Do you get their, I don't know, email addresses, or how are they getting? For example, I wrote the stories and the blog posts and I issued the podcast episode. How do I make sure that the ones who pledged receive this content?
Great question. There's a couple ways actually to do that. One, we use everything on Patreon is embedded, so we're not really hosting anything yet. So if you post your blog post on your website, or if you host a podcast on SoundCloud, you post that actually on Patreon through what we call a creation. And there's a creation button where you can click and you let the system know, is this a free post or is this a post where I'm going to charge my patrons for it? You can type in the URL right there and hit post. That'll grab the content from wherever it is that you're hosting it, and it'll create a creation on Patreon. So it's kind of like an embedding feature, which we've found out has done a lot of really great things for discovery. People can also just point people to their website where it's hosted, but then you won't show up in our categorical browsing or our discover section. So it's really good to post your creations regularly, whether you're charging them or they're just free creations. It's good to embed them onto Patreon so that you can gather a little bit of new fan base from those people that are looking to just pledge from people that they find on Patreon.
Okay, I see. And that leads me to another question. I mean, apparently, those who already have a large fan base, they can get a certain minimum of pledges, which they will get. What about someone who's just starting and he doesn't have a platform or audience yet? Can this work for him as well or not?
Absolutely. What we recommend is setting up a Patreon page regardless of how big or small your audience size is, because what we've found out is that it's not really about the size of the audience. It's about the community around the art. And whether that be a large community or a small community, that community can help sustain the content going forward. So we have people with large audiences that aren't as engaged, and really, really tiny audiences that are really close in a super tight-knit community. And whether the Patreon page is successful isn't really about the number or the size of the audience. It's about the content itself and the community that creator has built around that content.
Okay, so and can we say that there is some certain way that the creators, once they have the Patreon pages up, within the Patreon, within your system, there is a way that they can get new audience or not?
Absolutely. Like before, when we were talking about the posting of the creations, let's say you come out with a new blog post and you post it, and you tag it as this is a writing post. And you do that when you're setting up your creator page. You can say, I'm a writer. Every time that you create a new writing post, it'll show up in our categorical browsing. So when you hit discover on the top of Patreon, you can sort through different categories. And we have people on Patreon that are looking to support writers. And they'll browse through those writing creations and see if there's something that they like, and hopefully go sift through a little bit more of your content that you can see, and you can become a patron that way. We also have built a recommendation engine. So if a lot of somebody's patrons are also patrons of another person, we'll say, hey, you seem to really like person A's content. A lot of people that support person A also support person B. So do you want to check out person B as well? We built that into our system to help with discovery for creators, and maybe people with some of those smaller audiences get noticed a little more easily.
Okay, so it's a very interesting thing. I mean, I'm sure that especially those who don't have audiences yet and are starting from zero would be really interested in getting some of the people from there straight away.
Absolutely.
And what about, let's say someone is writing a novel, which is, I mean, it takes quite a while and it's a big chunk of things. So it's not like a blog post which you can post like on weekly basis. How are novelists dealing with that? Are they like posting, I don't know, the draft, 10, 15 pages of as long as they write it and go ahead? Or, what happens with this kind of bigger content?
Yeah, some people, they do it on a per release or per content campaign. And every time they release a range of chapters, whether that be chapter 1 through 10 or chapter 1 through 5, however big the book is going to be, they'll accept a Patreon pledge for every milestone that they reach throughout the duration of creating a longer piece of work.
Okay, I see. So in this case, just a note to the writers who are listening, this may be also a very good accountability tool, most probably. So, if you've decided to write something and you need a bit of push from a side, then you can put these milestones and make sure that you reach them and you have an additional motivation to do that.
Exactly.
What about, how many creative souls do you have right now who are using Patreon?
We have about 25,000, between 25,000, 28,000 creators on Patreon right now. We're growing at a rate of about 180 or 190 creators per day.
Okay. And they are from around the globe, I suppose?
Yeah, around the globe. The majority from North America and Europe and South America. But we, like I said before, we have people from all over the world using Patreon.
Okay, so I presume that it's not limited to English language only?
Yeah, so you can definitely type your Patreon page and description in any language that you want. We're actually going to be looking into translation soon, because for right now the majority of the website is written all in English. And we tell people if they do have some type of problems reading what it says, you can use like a browser or a plugin like Chrome has to auto translate the buttons on the site. But for most people creating that are not in English-speaking countries, there are a lot of Patreon pages that are written 100% in another language, and that's 100% okay. We actually like that, and it's kind of fun for us too.
Okay, so the creations also can be in a foreign language as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And do you, I don't know, maybe this will be interesting for the potential clients, let's say. Do you have an average, like how much in average your creator is getting from the fans?
I don't have, as far as like a gross amount from the creator's perspective, we don't have numbers on that. But what we do have is the average amount of dollars a patron pledges per month or per content. And that's somewhere between $7 and $8 per month or per content that the patrons are pledging to a creator.
Okay, one fan is providing from $7 to $8. Correct.
That's an average across the site.
Okay, and then depending on how many fans you have, you just multiply this average amount. Okay.
Yeah, and that's not going to be concrete again because every fan base is 100% different. But when we average it all out across the website, that's what we come up with.
Oh, okay, I see. And how do the payment system works? Do you get a commission and you send the rest, or how is it working?
Yeah, so Patreon takes 5% of the gross pledges just to make sure we have enough to operate here. And there's credit card processing fees as well that differ greatly across creators, but usually land somewhere between 4 and 5%. So if we can give the creator 90 to 91% back into their pockets, that's something that we're really happy with. We accept payments in the form of domestic and international credit and debit cards, as well as PayPal. And soon we're going to be accepting Bitcoin. And then payments out domestically, we do here in the U.S. direct deposit. Internationally, we do PayPal payments.
Okay, I see. And is there any minimum amount one has to collect in order to receive?
No, you can request payout at any time.
Okay, so you just don't have to wait for the month to finish?
No, you can request the payout at any time.
Anytime. Okay, great. And do you have something like, I don't know, a feature page where you post like the best projects?
There's a cool website that we put up. It's patreon.com/creators. And that'll give you a little rundown of like some of the larger projects and best practices and feature ideas. Also, for any creators that are interested in best practices, we have patreon.com/toolbox. And that will give you some best practices, creating your campaign, launching it, growing it, some tips for rewards and videos. That's a really great resource to write down as well.
Okay, I see. And I presume that each creator drives his own traffic, or do you have any helping tools to help them get some extra traffic?
Yeah, well, on the launch day, it's great to push out that you're launching social media accounts, and Patreon also has some social media presence, and we also allow people to submit their creations for the homepage, because we just put a bunch of cool stuff on our homepage for people to enjoy. And if you think that you have a really cool piece that would help you out, you can submit that at patreon.com/featureme.
I see. And what are the criteria? How are you choosing which ones to feature and which ones not?
We like to put very active and engaged creations. So if there's a lot of discussion and commenting on the posts, we just like to show off how people are using Patreon in the correct way and show that there's a lot of community around art. So when there's a lot of discussion and dialogue around posts, those are the ones that tend to make it up onto the homepage.
Okay, I see. And I don't know who came up with the idea and how was Patreon born? Let's just, the story of the Patreon's birth.
Yeah, Patreon started with Jack Conte. He's a co-founder with Sam Yam, and they were both roommates at the University of Stanford. Jack was an independent musician. He was creating YouTube videos, and he made this one video that he spent almost $10,000 on, and it was called Pedals. And he definitely went into a lot of debt creating that video, maxed out his credit cards, and finally put the video up on YouTube and got about $200 worth of AdSense revenue, which is advertising revenue. And so you can see the huge discrepancy in spending $8,000 and only receiving $200 back in income. So Jack turned to his fan base and was like, if you could just give me, $1 or $2 per video that I release, then I can continue to make this great content and you can continue to enjoy it. And basically overnight, Jack was able to gather up a $6,500 a video salary, which led to somewhere around $70,000 a year. For the first time, a sustainable, reliable, dependable income for an independent artist, which had never been done before. And he could predict that. Every time he was releasing a video, the money was sitting on Patreon, and he had a salary. And it worked for him, and he opened it up to his community. It started with him and 3 other people, and now it's blossomed and grown to over 25,000. And that's kind of where we're at today. And that's the story of why Patreon was built in the first place.
Well, it's really inspiring because all the creative people who are doing things most probably don't get any stable income, and they have to choose between their day jobs, which they don't like, and their passion, which doesn't necessarily make enough money to support them and their families. So here, they can. I mean, it's good that they can try it out, and while they are still working, and maybe at some point transition into a full-time income from Patreon.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's our hope, is that we can send enough money to creatives where they don't have to work a day job and they can just continue to be creative and do that for a living.
Yeah, that's the perfect idea, and I'm sure that it will be really successful. And also, I think it's good in a way also that creators will be more encouraged and motivated, which is a very good thing to have.
We hope so. Yeah, we hope so.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing this useful information with us and with the writers who are listening. I'm absolutely sure that most of them will check it out immediately because it's a really good source. And the last thing, I presume the answer is no, but I have to ask it. Do you provide any information of the fans to the creators? Like, I don't know, email list or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important. Everything that we do here at Patreon is very creator-centric. So all the decisions that we make, we have in mind the best interests of the creator. So if you get 100 fans that sign up, you get on the back end of Patreon, there's basically a built-in CRM, which we call the Patron Manager. And through the Patron Manager, you get the fans' email addresses, you get how much they're paying, you get their lifetime amount that they've given to you, any of their social media links that they've entered, and that is downloadable to you at any time via a CSV. So you can take that and use it wherever you want. We're confident here at Patreon that we've built an amazing platform to help creators, and that it's going to help them engage with their community and make a lot of money. But it's also important to us that we don't hold the creators hostage to the platform in any way. So that if it's in the best interest of the creator to take those email addresses and do something offline, then that's what we want to do, and we'll support the creator in that decision. But we hope and we're pretty confident that they'll stay on Patreon for all the benefits that they're going to give them.
Oh, amazing. So it can be used also as an email list building tool.
Absolutely, because you get access to all that information, and Patreon has a messaging system and a mass emailing system built right in.
On the Patreon site itself, you also can get direct communication with your fans.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, well, I'm sure that with this interview, the writers already found out that, it's something that at least they should check out. And
Definitely.
It has, and it has lots of benefits, and it solves many issues they are struggling with right now, and maybe ultimately it will also solve their dilemma in having a day job and trying parallelly to follow their passion. So thank you very much to you and to all others who are working at Patreon and providing such an amazing service to us, and hopefully my listeners will benefit from it as well, and we'll be happy to share our success stories with you as well.
Great. Thank you. This has been awesome. It's been awesome chatting.
Thank you for coming over. Well, creative souls, that was it for today, and I really hope that this interview was useful. I hope that this new platform which we introduced together with Cole will help you in your exciting journey of becoming a writer. I don't really have much to add besides that if you haven't yet checked out the free resources that I have available for you on my website, please hop over to www.anialexander.com/free. Before we meet again, please check out the Patreon's website and feel free to share your thoughts and experiences on Right to Be Read podcast's closed Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/Right to Be Read 2 as a number, B as a letter. Well, I hope to meet you again in the next episode.